talking about what makes you successful in life, relationships, and business. It's Jump, Pivot, and Roll with Shannon Stiles and Rachel Murphy.
So what are you afraid of? What threat are you facing right now that has you off your game or doesn't even allow you to get in the game? I guess we should back up a little bit. Let's talk about the definition of fear. So fear is an emotion caused by anxiety or the uneasiness of being afraid of something or someone. Today, we're going to address fear. We're going to tackle it head on. And we're going to talk about three main things. One, identifying that there is fear. The second thing we're going to talk about is how to identify it. I mean, it's one thing to know that you're afraid of something, but it's another thing to know what you're afraid of. And the third thing is we're going to talk about how to face that fear and overcome it. Do you realize, Rachel, that fear is spoken of over 500 times in the King James Version of the Bible?
I did not know that, but I'm not surprised that you do.
Well, of course I do. So do you know that phrases like do not be afraid or fear not appear about 365 times?
Wow.
Isn't that convenient? One verse a day to help you overcome fear every year.
That's good.
It's pretty amazing.
That is.
So I think fear is a great topic for us to talk about because it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what, I guess, I don't want to say industry, but what topic's a better word for this, that you're afraid of. It could be being afraid to have a child. It could be being afraid to step out into a different career, being afraid to get married, or being afraid to get a divorce, or
being afraid to use your voice,
especially during times like this. So
right.
as we're recording this right now, just 2 nights ago, there was a not a riot, a protest across the street from my business. And Black Lives Matter is a subject right now, and that's what everybody's upset about. And this coming right after COVID. So people have already been off work. Business owners are afraid right now. I mean, they were off for 3 months for COVID, and now all of a sudden we have to shut our doors early because we're afraid that there's going to be a riot.
Yeah.
Right? Now, I am not here to, I don't even want to state my opinion on all of that because let's be honest, guys, I am not a Black individual. I don't know what it feels like. I can't speak to that. But I do know that there's fear. And I do know that it's creating a lot of fear. So we think this is a great time to bring this up.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Because you know, one of the things that I think about fear, because fear has paralyzed me many times in my life, I think as it does all of us, is that I used to let it completely stop me. And I wish I could say I've completely overcome it and fear doesn't get in my way anymore. That would not be true. But what is that I've learned to look at fear in a different way. And I actually appreciate it. Would you like to know why?
Oh, I know why. You don't have to explain to me, but I'm sure the listeners are dying to understand it.
So I appreciate it because I know it means growth is getting ready to happen. It means something...
Or you're in the process of.
Yes. Yeah. Something exciting is happening either internally or externally for me because when we face our fears... when we look at it head on, and I'm going to back up for a minute because my husband kind of taught me this, and I absolutely love this. This was a game changer for me. And it is the fact that when I look at the worst possibility, right, of whatever that fear is, I mean, look at the worst possibility and I face it head on, all of a sudden, I've already seen how bad it could get.
Yeah.
And then when I can look at that and I can deal with the fact that, okay, this is the worst that can happen, now I can backtrack. Because I'm not letting all those little voices come in and take over because I've already dealt with them.
Well, and let's be honest. Our mind is we have great imaginations.
Oh,
and
beautiful.
The things that we can imagine probably will never come to fruition.
Oh, absolutely.
Probably not.
I remember when the kids were still at home, my teenagers driving, right? The girls would be 5 minutes late and I haven't received a text. And my poor kid is already flipped over in a car, in a ditch. It's on fire. I'm never going to get to see them again. And it might be that they lost 5 minutes of time, and so they're running late. Yeah. But as a mother, oh no,
and then
the end of the world.
Let's take that a step further, right? Because let's take it to when the kids walk through that door 5 minutes late. Now you're livid. You are going crazy, and they think you're a mad woman, which you are, because you let that imagination go somewhere that you didn't have the capability to pull yourself back.
Right. Now I have learned that, I think fear is such a good thing for a couple of reasons. It helps us keep ourselves safe, which is why we have fear. But I think there's healthy fear and there's unhealthy fear. And healthy fear says, okay, my child's late. I need to be aware and concerned, but let's be realistic about this. 5 minutes isn't 30 minutes, So
in that scenario, we're going to use that scenario. You don't realize that there's fear driving this.
I didn't then. I do now.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
But at that moment, you don't realize that emotion is driven by fear.
Right.
So if we can start identifying that it is an emotion of fear, that's when we can approach it differently.
Absolutely.
And that's why it's so important to be able to identify that there is fear.
Well, yeah, it gives you your power back.
It does.
Because what does fear do? It takes away our power.
Kind of.
Okay.
I don't think just identifying that there's fear gives you the power back. I think that you have to identify what the fear is.
Well, I agree with that.
Right?
I agree.
But it's getting you down the road.
It is. It's taking those first steps so that you can see, okay, now let's see if I can look at this realistically.
So let me give you another scenario, because I want our listeners to really be able to grasp what we're talking about here. So identifying that there's fear. Here's an example. You and your husband get into a huge argument. And inside your mind, he's already left you. He's cheating on you. He's doing all of the unforgivable. Or she, if it's your spouse, we'll go spouse. They've already done all the crimes you can possibly think of. That could lead to a major argument.
Oh, yeah.
That could lead to a major argument because the fear that you're having is a fear of being abandoned.
Right.
Right?
Right.
That's the actual name to what that fear is. If you can identify that that's there, that you do tend to, jump to conclusions because you've been abandoned before in the past, then you can deal with it. Then you can actually practice active listening.
Oh, we will talk about active listening
most
soon,
definitely,
guys. You will not want to miss that one.
It is a game changer, but
it is.
But I think that, we've got to start programming our minds, and we have to come up with a way to notice when we're allowing fear to take over.
And I think that's the important thing, is there's a difference between realizing that fear is there and allowing it to take over. I love the example that you used about the husband and wife. It makes me think about the joke where the husband comes in and he's not paying attention to the wife, and she's gotten her hair done, and he sits down on the couch and he's sitting over there and he's just deep in his head and he's not being very affectionate. And that's exactly what the wife's thinking. Oh my goodness, he's cheating on me. He doesn't love me. And what he's thinking is, do I want a 1-car garage or a 2-car garage? And will the truck fit inside? And that's really so much of what it is. We think that people think this or they feel this, and it's usually not the truth. Like, fear doesn't really tell us the truth.
I agree. It reminds me of the book, Men Are From Mars, Women Are From Venus.
Yes.
Do I have that right?
Yeah.
Okay, good.
Yeah.
Or there's another one. Men are like waffles. Women are like pancakes.
Oh, I haven't read that.
Wait, maybe women aren't like pancakes, but they are like waffles because men compartmentalize. How do you say that? I know the word I'm looking for, but holy cow. It must be the M&M I just put in my mouth.
She tried to do that sneaky, guys.
But if we know this is what we do,
right, it
leaves you with peace.
It does.
It leaves you in a position where you don't have to let that, we are so good at letting our imagination take us for a ride. It's like a roller coaster, right? You get on the imagination train and it turns out to be the biggest, scariest roller coaster you've ever gotten on in your life. But if we hear it, the roller coaster, and we might be able to identify it before we get on it, we don't have to get on that. Mm-hmm. We don't. So the first thing is identify that there is fear.
And be okay with that. Realize that is part of the process. And that's actually something to get a little bit excited about, because something's getting ready to change. There is a seed that has been planted that is getting ready to bloom.
I love that you brought that up, because it's the language we use, right?
Right.
When we use that language of, instead of saying, I was scared to death, maybe say, that caused a little bit of anxiety.
That's owning it.
Yeah, exactly.
That is putting a label on it and giving you power.
But you are so right with, if you can change your perspective, and if you can see it from a different view, instead of it being a scary thing, it can become exciting.
Yeah.
And let me tell you, this can happen with anything. After my husband and I went through the whole affair situation, it was horrible. But I changed the way I looked at it. And I was very excited because, one, I'd stuck around. And I broke the pattern, right? I mean, I'm on my 3rd marriage. So that was huge that I stayed. But 2, after we broke that barrier, we were able to identify the things that brought fear, and we were able to work on it. And I'll tell you what was exciting about it, Rach, is we broke through to another level. We elevated to a level that just I never thought I'd ever be at. But it was because I faced that fear.
Yeah, the fear of the what if.
And I changed the way I looked at it.
I was going to say,
I changed the way I looked at it.
You also started seeing things about each other that you missed before. And you changed the way that you just changed your love language. You learned things.
If you ever want to know how much you love someone, let them go.
Yeah.
Let them go. I mean, that really shows you everything. So now that we know, we have to identify that there is fear.
Right.
The big question is, how do you identify it?
Well, I think you do it exactly the way that you said, is that you look at it and you see, okay, what's really going on? Am I afraid because I have imposter syndrome? That's a big one for me, right? Because as somebody who's all about the details and wanting it to look good and to work right and perfection, that imposter syndrome is huge. What if I don't do it good enough? What if nobody tunes in? What if I put all this time in and it's a complete flop? Mm-hmm. What if it is? But what if
I'm not a good mother? What if I'm not a good, right.
But what if you do it all and you change one person's life?
Or you have that child and you're the best, you get Mother of the Year, right?
There you go. I mean, and I think so much of fear comes from our expectations. We expect so much from ourselves and others sometimes that I think it's unfair and unrealistic.
So how do you identify it?
Well, I think you look at it and you look at what's really going on. Let's go back to the husband and the wife, right? Mm-hmm. Sitting on the couch. If she says to him, boy, honey, you seem to be far away. Is everything okay? And he says, oh, yeah, I'm just thinking about if we want a 1 or 2 car garage. Are you kidding me?
So it comes down to asking the right questions.
Or not being afraid to ask the questions, period, of somebody else or yourself.
Yeah, so many times there's a big, huge elephant in the room and we ignore it.
Oh, we do.
And that elephant now becomes a circus, and the circus becomes, we just let it grow and grow and grow. So I have a couple of questions that you can add to your toolbox, right? Okay. Why am I so anxious right now?
That's a good one.
What's causing me this anxiety?
Right.
Right? Because if you can ask yourself that, and then you can figure it out, you can ask more questions. Another way to do it is say, think about what types of topics make you uncomfortable to talk about. Right now, I will talk about this. Right now, racism might be a sore subject. People might be afraid to talk about, they might be afraid to say the word black or white, right? And once you realize what the topic is, then you can say, well, why am I afraid to do that? And you can dig deeper. One recommendation I do have is when you do this question game, you always want to go at least 7 layers deep.
Oh, yeah.
You want to ask at least 7 more questions. So let's say it's got nothing to do with your marriage. It's got, nothing to do with what's going on in the world right now. Maybe ask, what do you hate doing and how does it make you feel? So, for example, I can tell you that when I was actually selling insurance, I hated selling insurance. Isn't that crazy? I did. And by the way, I own an insurance company, but I still hate selling because that's not what it's about for me. But when I did this and I practiced these questions and I said, well, what do I hate doing? I hate selling insurance. How does it make me feel? It makes me feel like a scumball, right? Insurance salesmen are horrible. They're slimy. Well, unless you do it from the heart, because our company is ran by sales, but we don't sell. We do what's right.
You do customer service.
Yeah.
Your whole mission is to take care of and protect your community. And
educate and protect our community is our mission. And so I took something that made me very anxious, you guys. Oh my gosh, I'd stay up at night thinking, I don't want to make that phone call. I don't want to sell them. It reminds me of, you ever watch Andy Griffith?
Oh, of course.
Okay, so I can't remember his character name. I wish my husband was here because he knows them all. But he's the shoe salesman, traveling shoe salesman. You know who I'm talking about?
Mm-hmm.
And he always comes into town and he goes, or he's some kind of salesman, but he comes into town and he's like, "How are you, Andy? How you doing, Barney?" And they say, "What do you have in the case?" "Well, I don't want to be a pushy salesman." "Well, what you got?" "Well, I don't want you to feel like you have to look at it." You know, that's how I was.
Okay, girl, I'm loving this accent. Keep it up.
But that's how I was. I didn't want to be this pushy person. But once I asked the question, you know, what do I hate doing and how does it make me feel? I was then able to figure out, what do I love doing? And switch that. Well, I love taking care of people. I love educating people and teaching people. So how does that make me feel? That makes me feel like I'm serving others and I'm giving back to my community and I'm protecting my community. And I was then able to overcome that fear of selling, because selling just means you closed a deal, right? If it's educating and protecting and getting somebody the right coverage, the end of it's going to be a sale.
It is.
So I think it's really important to look at it in that way also. Right. And you know what? We're going to have to take a quick break. Okay. And when we come back, I'll give you another one. You're listening to Jump, Pivot, and Roll. We'll be back in just a moment after a word from our sponsors.
The Jump, Pivot, and Roll podcast is brought to you in part by the Shannon Styles Allstate Insurance Agency. Just as you take that next step in life, you need to take that next step in protecting yourself, your car, your home, and your family. Reach out to Shannon at 316-773-9864 or shoot her an email at sstyles@allstate.com. Also by Simplify My Life ICT. Is your life cluttered? Do you need help with organization? Rachel Murphy can help. Check out Rachel's services online at simplifymylifeict.com or reach out to Rachel at simplifymylifeict@gmail.com. To keep up with the Jump, Pivot, and Roll podcast, make sure to follow them on their Facebook page. Just go to facebook.com/Jump, Pivot, and Roll. There you can find content, podcasts of the show, discussions with Rachel and Shannon, and more. Plus, make sure to subscribe to the podcast on any of your favorite podcasting sites, from iTunes and Spotify, Google Play to TuneIn, and right on their Podbean site at jumppivotandroll.podbean.com. And for all the exclusive content, make sure to become a VIP member on their Patreon site. Just go to patreon.com/Jump, Pivot, and Roll.
And welcome back to Jump, Pivot, and Roll with Rachel Murphy and Shannon Styles. Today we're talking about fear, and we're talking about 3 specific things in fear to identify that there is fear. The second thing is how to identify what the fear is. And the third thing is how to face it. So we're at the tail end of how to identify it, and we're sharing a couple of questions that you can ask yourself in order to identify what type of fear you have. So another question is, do you avoid certain people or jobs? I can share with you that years ago, I used to avoid very intellectual crowds. Now, you know why I did this, of course. I think I've even shared with the listeners. I was kind of demeaned at one point by someone who was very well read, not very smart, but very well read, and so that kind of planted a seed of fear for me that I would get in the middle of this conversation and I wouldn't be smart enough to or have enough intelligence to carry out that conversation.
You know, I have to just say that angers me so much that somebody else's outside opinion could take so much away from you. And I really hope our listeners, if you have those outside voices that ever make you feel the way that Shannon did, that you shut them down. Okay, Shannon, continue.
And I agree 100%, because I'll tell you what, I probably lost 10 years of my progress and my growth due to this. And it's not her fault. It's my fault, because I didn't know I could shut those down. Right. I didn't know I didn't have the confidence to shut that down. So Rachel's 100% correct. If you're avoiding someone because of the way that they make you feel, maybe they're not your person, but confront them anyway. And we'll talk about that in a minute. But I would avoid intellectual people because I played over the scenario in my brain over and over and over again that they would start talking about some classical book and I wouldn't even know it was a classical book. And so that put me on a journey of becoming a very avid reader. And there was something good that came out of it, of course, but you should never feel like that. A better way that I could have handled that, and I'm kind of getting into this number 3 now, is I could have said, I've never read that. What do you like about that? What is it about that book that just really puts out as a top 5 for you?
And that's a really good point that you make. When you're in a situation like that and you're uncomfortable or you don't know exactly what the person's talking about, the music, the book, the whatever it is, by asking for their opinion and their insight, that does a lot of things for you. Number 1, it does bring you into the conversation.
Exactly.
Number 2, it tells you, is this something that might be worth my while to check out? And it makes you a person who is interested in that other person who's talking as
ding,
you
ding,
being
ding, ding.
heard.
Yes.
Huge. That is a gold nugget.
That is probably one of the best things you can do, because I'm here to tell you not everybody wants to talk to the smartest man in the room. And the smartest man in the room usually, or woman, the smartest person in the room usually has everybody coming up trying to be as smart as they are, like vomiting their intelligence onto them. And if you sit back and you're different from somebody and you say, I read somewhere that you really, really like this book. Why is it that you like that book? You're golden. You're the person they're going to want to talk to all night long. Because there's one subject every single person in the world loves to talk about.
Themselves.
Exactly. I mean, think about it. Or their family.
Mm-hmm.
If I come up to you and I want to talk to you and I bring up your family, we're friends for life.
Absolutely. You're talking about the things that are most important to me.
Yeah, exactly. So that brings us to how to face fear.
Okay.
So now we've identified that there is fear. We've gone a little deeper and identified what the fear truly is, right? So maybe it could be fear of abandonment. Maybe it's fear. This is one that I think everybody has. You're not enough.
Imposter syndrome.
Yep.
It's a real thing.
It is. Maybe it's a fear that you don't have enough
whatever
financially, right? Or it's a fear of failure. If you're, let me tell you right now, if you're struggling with fear of failure, the only failure there is not doing something. That's the only time you can fail.
That's right.
The only time. I mean, Thomas Edison, he had somebody ask him after he invented the light bulb, how did it feel to fail 10,000 times? And do you know what his answer was? I did not fail 10,000 times. I found 10,000 ways it wouldn't work.
And that is so powerful.
Yeah. That's the way that we should look at everything.
Well, he changed the language, right?
Right.
I mean, he totally changed the language. He said, I didn't fail. I found a way it didn't work so that I could try something else.
Exactly.
And you know what? I think he did something that I love the word uncomfortable. You know that. That's my word for the year. And
yes.
As our listeners, you guys may have heard me say this before, but learning to be comfortable in the uncomfortable is such a game changer. If you are afraid to step in front of people and speak, then I want you tomorrow to find an opportunity to step on a stage, a little stage. I don't care.
Step in the middle of a crowd of 3 people and
speak.
Yeah.
Absolutely, because once you realize that the ceiling's not going to cave in, the people aren't going to go run screaming out of the building, and it's not going to erupt into fire, you find that, oh, that wasn't so hard. Maybe I can speak to 5 people next time.
Yeah, and what we're talking about here is take small steps, right?
Right.
Think about how you can break it down into something that's manageable. Or you could be like me, and you could jump in the deep end feet first and make yourself learn to swim. I mean, you can do it
have
either
a best
way.
friend standing by with a life preserver.
Exactly. You can do it either way, right? That was how I figured it out, by the way. But it was my friends around me that jumped in and helped me swim. But the thing is, just take that step. Whether it's large, whether it's small, take that step.
Because if you don't, if you let fear win over and over and over again, it's never going to give up its grip. Fear is never going to say, oh, you know what? I've had enough of you. Let me move on to somebody else.
No. What happens is fear is going to, once it has you and it knows that it can play you,
it owns you.
Which I call it the devil. It's going to use that tool of fear in all aspects of your life. Maybe you're just afraid of dogs. And it says, oh, this little fear tool works pretty well. Let me bark in her marriage or his marriage. Oh, let me bark in their career now.
Yep.
Let me get them off kilter here, you know? Yep. So another thing, talk about it. Talk about your fears.
Everybody has them.
My husband, he talked about his fears a lot, right? He talked about how he's got this fear. When he was younger, he went water skiing with his grandfather, and he swears a shark, a fish, jumped up and bit him. And yes, something bit him. Something happened. Maybe it was something in the water scratched him. I don't know what happened. Wasn't there, don't know. But it did scar him. It did leave this traumatic bruise, right? And so he talks about that to me all the time. Well, we went down to the lake when we first started dating, and I said, you're not going to sit out there. You got to get in the water. It's hot. No, I'll sweat before no, you're here with me. Get in the water. And so we took baby steps. It was, okay, just put your feet in. All right, just do this. Well, by the time we were done, he was on a noodle for 2 hours, right? But the next time we went to Cancun, and we're on this catamaran, beautiful, gorgeous, all around us. And I said, jump off the catamaran with me. I can't do that. Well, you did it in the lake. He said, you're right, I did. So he jumps off the catamaran. Now, he was out of the boat. He was back on the boat before I even came up. But he takes those little steps. And by the fact that he talked to me about it, and I knew he had these fears, I was able to help him through it, right? I was able to really coax him into going a little further. Now, we can make a plan to go to the lake and hang out with friends, and I know he'll get in, right? But he talked about it, and the anxiety, it takes away that anxiety, you know?
Well, and I think that also when we talk to people about our fears, we realize we're not alone.
Exactly.
We all have fears. And all of a sudden, when maybe we can't change the language ourselves, right? Maybe we can't see that we're being unrealistic. By talking to somebody about it, they may be able to present it to us in a way we didn't see it. And I'll give you an example. Have you ever said to your child, Shannon, something like you gave them this moment of wisdom? You gave them this little nugget, and they look at you like you have a third head. And then Joe Blow, favorite uncle, friend,
all the time,
right, walks in, says the exact same thing, not even as well as you did.
I've pounded that little nugget into his head 24/7 at times.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And all of a sudden, this is the wisest person that has ever walked the planet. And you're standing there looking at them going, what? and so it's that. So sometimes we need that person to go to our fear and say, what? And show us what we're missing. And by opening ourselves up to our tribe, those right people, right? And it is important to choose those right people. They might be able to help you turn that fear around and see the way it really is instead of what you're imagining it to be. Don was great for that with the kids because he'd see me freaking out and he's like, honey, they're 5 minutes late. They're 5 minutes late.
Right.
Give it another 10 minutes. Then we'll start to worry. And by then they're already in the driveway.
Exactly. Exactly. Now, I can't let this episode go without talking about mine.
Okay.
I have one way that I overcome fear. I do this for every single thing in my life. And there is nothing that I'm afraid to do. And I can seriously say nothing that I'm so afraid that it paralyzes me. Nothing. And that is, I can do all things through Christ who strengthens me. I know that I might personally have that fear, but it doesn't paralyze me. It doesn't stop me from moving forward because I might not have the strength, but God has it.
It's a very good point, but I'm still not jumping out of an airplane with you, Shannon.
Okay, anybody listening that wants to and is near Wichita, Kansas, please call me because I really want to do that and everybody's telling me no. I'll go do it by myself. You can take pictures.
There we go.
But I go back to the Bible, and the reason I go back to the Bible is because if it was important enough to put the word fear in the Bible over 500 times, we should open our eyes and say, okay, the devil uses this as a tool, right? Over 500 times. Doesn't even say love that many times, right? It's fear because it's a tool that's used against us. And 365 different verses saying do not be afraid or, fear not or whatever, that same type of message. I mean, look at Deuteronomy 31:8. He will never leave you nor forsake you. Do not be afraid. Do not be discouraged. There's some truth to this. I mean, if we want, Rachel and I can give you all the to be this amazing, miraculous human being. We don't want God going, oh, not a plane, jump out of plane. And you know what? If you go squash at the end, there's a reason, right? It's okay. Do it anyway.
That's really what we want to get out there to you guys is that, fear is real. And we don't want you to feel like you're not allowed to be afraid. But what we want to do is help you change that language in your head to where it doesn't paralyze you. It prepares you and it helps you figure out your next steps. And like Shannon said, talking about it and realizing and identifying it, guys, that's where you get your power. And that's where you own fear instead of fear owning you.
Yeah, I agree 100%. And we are here every week talking to you guys because we want you to be the best individual that you were created to be. We want you to live the best life that you were ever created to be. And how are you going to live that life if you don't try things? So one final thing I want to say is, if you have a fear and you're saying, what if I'm not good enough? That's okay. Ask yourself that. I'm not saying don't do it. But what I'm saying is, promise me that after you answer that question, your final question is, what if I'm amazing at this?
Right.
Write those things down. That's what you want to capture. That's whose life is going to be changed if I do this? How many people can I elevate if I do this? What an amazing family environment will I create if I do this? Those are the questions you want to ask yourself.
Absolutely. That's perfect. So our challenge to you guys this week, because I love to do those challenges, and when we have our guests on, we love to hear their challenges. So I want you to write down one thing that you're fearful of right now, whatever it is. And like Shannon said, go 7 layers deep and really look at what that is, and then find a step, one little step forward that helps you face that fear, and get comfortable being uncomfortable, because that's when it gets really good.
And the next time that you get upset, remember what we said. You identify that there's a fear there. Identify that this is just an emotion you're feeling. This is a feeling you're having. It doesn't mean it's true. It doesn't mean it's reality. It's just a feeling. And then identify what that feeling is. And then you'll be able to come up with all of those questions, say 7 layers deep, like Rachel's saying, and you'll be able to face it.
Absolutely. So guys, if you have finished and gotten this far in the episode, it means you enjoyed what you hear. So we want you to remember to JPRS, that jump, pivot, roll. And this is how we want you to remember it. J, join us. Join us each week. Let us know what you want to hear and who you want to hear from, because that's important to us, and that's why we're here. We want you to remember P, progress. It's all about progress, not perfection. Do not let perfection stop you, because every baby step you take gets you closer to your dreams. R, review. Please leave us a review. Leave us your favorite takeaway. Leave us those messages so we know how to make this better. And most important is that S, please subscribe so you don't miss the amazing guest we have coming. And we appreciate you and thank you so much for being here.
Here, I thought the S was for Shani.
Sorry, it's not all about you, girl.
Thank you so much for listening. We really appreciate you being here. Have a wonderful week.
Bye, guys.